So, welcome to our session about learnings from the removal of loot boxes in Brawl Stars. You've probably seen one or two headlines out there. And as we say in Finland, Brawl is currently doing pretty okay. What these nice headlines don't show, though, is how much it took it to get us here. And today we're going to talk about the removal of loot boxes, but also our key learnings by taking Brawl Stars from historical lows to historical heights right now. And spoiler alert, we're going to talk a lot about engagement. Show of hand, maybe. How many in the room have played Brawl Stars? Oh, wow.
Oh, sweet. Sweet. Awesome.
That's quite a few. For those who don't play Brawl, Brawl is a fast-paced 3 versus 3 multiplayer battle game and battle royale. It's made for mobile. It was released into global launch in December 2018 and generated a little bit over $2 billion USD lifetime revenue so far. The game is made by a very diverse team of people mostly in Helsinki, but supported by some of our colleagues in South Korea. We have 23 nationalities in the team. And we are also supported by a bunch of people in central teams within Supercell and on the outside. So we're working with freelancers, and we're working with agencies on the outside to support our work. My name is Keienburg. I'm the general manager for Brawl Stars. I've been with Supercell for a bit over 9 years now. 9 years, 3 months, and 12 days or something. I moved to Finland, you have to understand that. So I'm still counting days, maybe. Previously, I worked for Blizzard Entertainment in Europe in a role in PX.
Awesome. And my name is Frank Yan. I currently work as a game designer on Brawl Stars and mainly focus on systems. And prior to this, I was also at Blizzard, but in the most recently on the Hearthstone team. I was there for about 6 years and 2 years at Supercell. And I got my start when my dad told me that I'll never amount to much if I played a lot of video games. So that really fueled some passion to prove him wrong.
And no, you don't have to be called Frank, and neither did you have to work at Blizzard to get a job at Supercell. We're hiring. So yes, let's go. So the talk today is separated in 3 sections, really. It's before, during, and after the removal of loot boxes. And the first part, before we go into anything else, please keep in mind that what we're presenting to you today is our reality, it's our learnings. They're very specific to Brawl Stars, to the history of Brawl Stars, and everything else. So your game circumstances might be different. We still hope that some of the learnings we are sharing with you in a moment will be applicable to what you do. But we wanted to set the expectation that, just because it worked here for us, doesn't necessarily mean that it works for you. Before we talk about the removal of loot boxes, let's talk about how loot boxes actually looked like in Brawl Stars before. And they were pretty much part of the game from early soft launch. We went through a bunch of iterations in the meta, but ultimately ended up with this series of 3 different boxes. You have the regular Brawl box, that's the iconic thing on the left. In the middle, you have a big box that's worth 3 boxes. And then the mega box, the piece de resistance. And that one is 10 gacha pulls. Now, these boxes contain both horizontal and vertical progression in Brawl Stars, so it was your primary mean to progress in the game. And it was our second most important SKU after the Battle Pass, which is called Brawl Pass in Brawl Stars. This is how it looked. You open a box, had a few tabs with escalating rewards. Sometimes you got lucky and got a brawler. And that was the whole experience. Now, let's talk a little bit about the early days of Brawl Stars. Initially, things were great. So you see there on the left side the period from December 2018 to December 2019, and then January 2020 to June 2021. On the left is a global launch that, again, was December 2018. The big revenue spike there in the middle, what a happy moment. It's a combination between Brawl Pass, the first version, and the game launch in China. And as you can see, the numbers came down quite hard afterwards. Overall, what we saw in our game is that the revenue did not always follow the growth of the MAU. It was still meaningful, and over these 18 months or so, the game generated the first 1 billion USD. However, things didn't stay like that. This is then the period from July 2021 until October 2022. So coming out of the summer period, summer 2021, Europe is a crazy important market for us. And everyone in Europe in summer 2021 traveled because they could travel again. And we have this weird thing that in most games, vacation means people play more. But in Brawl Stars, when people go on vacation, they play less because the social graph around them is missing. So it hurt us. So after summer, we need to bring people back to the game somehow. And guess what? They didn't come back. And there's some external factors, but also probably a bunch of internal factors of us not hitting the mark with our updates. In October 2021, we released an update to stem the tide against the decrease of our KPIs. And so we introduced a feature for clubs where all the members in the club could participate. It was a really hardcore system with leagues and a shop, a special currency, etc. And we thought, we need to enable social to get higher retention, yada, yada, yada. We also introduced two new power levels to the game. Before that, we had 9 power levels for each brawler. Now we had 11. And to make that interesting, why would you level up your character? We introduced new ultimate abilities. There were passives, actually, called gears you could equip. And they were pretty complex. You had to collect them, different pieces, then craft them, a concept completely new to Brawl Stars. And, well, initially, you see that both MAU and revenue stabilized somewhat, but there was also the seasonality, of course, in Q4. But ultimately, this update didn't hit the mark at all with our community. And they told us in no unclear terms that the fund-to-cost ratio for this new feature was not OK. Then, February 2022, Russia invaded the Ukraine. For us, that meant that in February, essentially, we pulled out of Russia immediately. And Russia, at that point, represented 25% of our DAU and 20% of our revenue. So in this downtrend already, we had, an even harder battle to fight. Then later in the year, we decided to rework gears. The community, especially a hardcore community, was still pretty upset with this update. So we simplified everything, no more crafting. Gears could just drop now. It's just one level. And it worked out again somewhat. DAU and MAU came up. Revenue stabilized somewhat. But yes, it didn't really do much. So after seeing a decline for quite a long period, we knew we needed a change. Change position.
OK, great. Around this time, I actually got hired. So I got hired during a pretty tense period, not going to lie. It was a bit stressful. They kind of said, hey, we need someone on systems design to come kind of help us recover the game. And when I came on, one of the key questions that we asked was, how do we get players excited to come back to Brawl Stars? And the answer was quite clear. Unlocking brawlers is one of the most engaging aspects of the game. Particularly, we have 5 rarities of brawlers. The highest is legendary, as you see here. And these are the most exciting brawlers to unlock. Because through boxes, there's a chance you unlock one of these, and it's a really exciting moment. You see it in videos, people record, and it's really, really exciting. So at this point, we had maybe like 8 to 10 of these legendary brawlers. And when we did the math, it was like, on average, it takes a free-to-play player almost a year to unlock a legendary brawler. So we actually viewed this kind of as an issue. So we believed kind of like the best solution would be to remove loot boxes from the game. This is a pretty dramatic jump from what I just said, but I'll go through a bunch of reasons, and maybe reasons that maybe weren't that great in hindsight. But so why did we believe that we should have removed loot boxes? The first was we were in a decline, and we felt we could take bigger risks with the game. The second was that we wanted to provide more choice to players and clear goals around brawler unlocks. You just saw a common problem there. The third was there was a lot of scrutiny and continues to be a lot of scrutiny around loot boxes in the media. And imagine a situation where we come out and we say, Brawl Stars is removing loot boxes. That is a very newsworthy moment, and we felt this could be what we needed, the silver bullet, so to speak. And then certainly, even within Supercell, the other teams had kind of been discussing, like, maybe we wouldn't do a loot box. And so we thought that in the worst case, we'd be able to pass on some learnings from Brawl to other games. Naively, though, and this is a huge but, we decided to remove all random rewards from the game. So regardless, let's go down the second part of the presentation, which is around what did we do during this process of removing loot boxes. Well, we had some key goals. Not surprisingly, we wanted to provide clear goals and expectations for when players can expect to unlock their next brawler. We felt that because loot boxes, as Frank mentioned, and I'm not talking about myself in the third person, we need a new monetization hook because loot boxes represented quite strong monetization for the game. It had to be really easy to understand, and I can't overemphasize this enough, and this will transcend the talk, that it had to be really easy to understand. People have to come in, they have to get it, and this is a really core pillar of ours. So this is what the replacement system looked like. We call it the Star Road, 2 Rs, and what happens is you kind of unlock brawlers sequentially. So basically, we tell you in the beginning which brawlers you'll unlock, and then you kind of collect this new currency called credits. And once you earn enough credits as a free-to-play, you unlock that brawler. The order is predetermined in the sense that everybody gets the same path. So there's no unfairness here. And however, we have to account for different rarities. We have 5 rarities. Each has a different price point that had to be respected in the system. And so as I mentioned, we have credits as the new currency, and we said no RNG in this system, right? However, this is this leads to the first learning, which we had over 60 brawlers in the game at this time, and imagine like if we had come up with a system where you got a choice between all 60. That's a very tall order. We actually wrestled with the design of the Star Road for many, many weeks. We went back and forth around the questions of, how do we account for you unlocking a rarity? Because imagine if players are excited to unlock a legendary rarity brawler, but it takes them many, many weeks, but they can choose to unlock a legendary. They could be stuck unlocking a legendary brawler and not being able to unlock brawlers for a very, very long period of time. So we had to account for this in the design of the new system in arriving at this. Also, how many choices do we give you? We had to kind of find a way to limit that. And, what about new brawlers added to the game? How do we account for that? Our ultimate decision, as you saw in the prior video, was we had these really complicated design documents, and ultimately what we realized was, look, we're just going to allow players, we'll give them a subset of choices, and they'll just be able to freely switch between which brawler they want to unlock until they have enough credits, and then they get to unlock that brawler. And this is kind of the details of what that looks like. So this player is first unlocking Jackie. She's a super rare brawler, our second lowest rarity. And then we say, hey, now you're unlocking either Brock or Barley. You make a choice. We wanted to kind of have you commit to that choice so at least you kind of saw your progress towards that brawler. And then the closer you got, actually the higher chance that people would monetize to kind of top up the rest. And then you kind of move on to the next. And we always just limited the amount of choices for you in this new kind of system. What this meant was that the Star Road accounted for brawler unlocks, and because I mentioned earlier that we removed all random rewards, this is some foreshadowing, all of the rewards for vertical progression, so powering up those brawlers, became deterministic. So you knew exactly what amount you were getting when. So some of the pros and cons. Well, I'm just going to mention one key pro and one key con. The pro is that it's very predictable. You know exactly which brawler you're going to get. You have a choice, so it's like really easy to understand. And the con, though, was that it's really not that exciting and to unlock brawlers anymore in this new system, because you knew there was no surprise when you were going to get them. And so engagement was at risk here. Regardless, I think this comes to our first learning, which is, and this is something that comes up often in our design discussions, is when wrestling with a design, simplify. And you could probably cross out the first part of that sentence and just the learning is just simplify. Because a lot of our designs, I think, that resulted in some of the historical highs we've experienced more recently, we do think they're really easy to understand. And Brawl is played by a largely young audience. And when they come in, it has to be really obvious what the game they're playing is and how things work. So I can't overemphasize this first learning enough. Okay, so we decided this was what we're going to ship with, YOLO. And Frank will now talk about what happened.
So at the end of November, we have the Brawl Stars World Finals usually. It's an esports event. And during that event, we had a small community talk on stage, which told the community that we will remove loot boxes from the game. And the irony, lo and behold, we introduced a new box to send it off, the Omega box, the box to enter boxes. And so we created this community event where the community would have to do some takedowns in the game. We're talking about millions and millions of takedowns. And as they progressed on this path, they would unlock rewards. Because we wanted that the community feels good about changing system. And it was really, really important for us so far that, well, they were on board with that change. They got excited. We could also re-attract people. And so we created a simple community video where we talked about it, which garnered 17 million views. Just like a little community video. So it reached a lot of people, created a lot of hype, and people were really, really excited about this. So that started late November, early December. In the same period, we had a lot of other things going on. Besides the Omega Box event, we also have our traditional seasonal freebies in December, from December 12th, which is our anniversary, to the 26th. We had a free brawler people could unlock with a quest. We had a new legendary that garnered a lot of interest, and the first legendary was cheaper after the system change. And last but not least, seasonality. Q4 is always higher for us in audience, and spend is also always higher. So the initial results were pretty promising. You see pretty clearly when things happened. So first, the Omega Box event, early December, late November, and then the update itself with a star drop on December 12th. And normally, even on update days, we have a DAU and MAU drop. So it was pretty clear that the community got excited and a lot of people came back to the game. And yeah, so zoomed in really in the DAU, the initial results looked awesome. DAU was up 60% month over month, which is like, wow, hey, did we just pull this off? However, it was super hard to get a read on what was actually going on because the aforementioned things we did. So the next learning is really about, and hindsight is great, but the next learning is about reducing noise when you ship important things. You really want to make sure that you can read those changes in your data in other ways. And we just couldn't. The socials were full of stuff. Most people were still talking about the removal of boxes, so it was impossible to read socials. The data showed us, well, what you just seen, it looked pretty good and pretty promising. Even retention jumped up temporarily. But yeah, it was impossible to read for us. So our suggestion to you, if you ship a big changing update or something really where the key is in measuring the outcome, yeah, avoid doing a ton of other stuff around it. And don't pick Christmas, because that's, we were in a hurry for some reason.
Yeah, no kidding.
So now we're going to the period after we shipped the Star Road. We had 2 more updates right after, and both of these updates had been planned as the original change. In February, we shipped Masteries. Masteries, the idea was pretty simple. Give players another way and give players more agency to change this on-rails path the regular unlock process of brawlers was All of a sudden, just by playing more, there was a cap there as well, but that cap would kick in after like 8 hours of straight play or something. You could get additional currency to unlock brawlers, to upgrade brawlers, some extra cosmetics for the brawlers you loved. Yeah. And then there was a second update in April, which introduced a new currency, Bling. It removed an old currency called Star Points and introduced the catalog. In short, what this did is that we replaced a currency that was entirely broken. It was exponential. Star Points was something we would give out for competing in the game in different places. But an average player would maybe get 50 Star Points in a week. And someone who is super, super invested would get 50,000. And it's incredibly hard to manage that from an economy perspective. And so we couldn't. We couldn't produce all that content for these people with 50,000, and it also didn't make sense. But we also couldn't lower the barrier for other people. So we removed it. We replaced it with Bling. Bling became a pure cosmetic currency. We made it clear from the beginning. Bling can be used to buy almost all the skins, all the cosmetic items in the game, except the higher rarities of items. So we wanted to make cosmetic items more accessible for free-to-play players as well. We hoped it would generate some hype in the community. And the catalog is the second feature here. The catalog was our new way to distribute skins. When Brawl Stars launched, we had like less than 20 skins in the game. And so you had a random 4 skins showing up in your store every day. For 20 skins, that works. When it shows up, you buy it. That was the only way to buy skins. But by this moment, we had over 300 skins in the game. So waiting for the skin you really, really wanted was really cumbersome. So we resolved it. We removed that barrier. People could just go and buy skins. Quick show of hands. These 2 updates. How many of you think those changes were positive for our community? Oh, wow.
Wow. OK, all right, some hands. All right, good stuff, good stuff.
Yes, both.
I guess everybody is negative then. OK.
Both features were, in fact, embraced by our core community. So if you looked on Reddit or Twitter, people were raving about it. They were like, oh, the developers, they finally get their shit together. And it's like, sorry, PR person.
We didn't rehearse this part.
No, we did not. I'm getting the evil eye from our PR person. But yeah, the reality was unfortunately not that rosy. Our DAU kept declining. So the Star Road hit, brought a ton of people back. But as you can see, even by the time the Mastery update arrived, we were already below the November numbers in DAU. And Masteries and Bling did not really change that trajectory, at least not immediately. These are the D30 retention cohorts, both for Bling and Masteries. The important learning here for us, and that's maybe also a pretty obvious thing to say, but big changes, just because you feel like, oh, we need to make a big change, we need to shake up things. Those big changes are rarely a silver bullet. It's not like we make this big change, everything will get good. So Star Road did not fix our problems at all. And yes, big changes can be part of the solution, but by themselves, it's more like rolling the dice and see if it will work or not. So for us, we transitioned actually about mid last year to a place where we take selected big bets and go much deeper with making incremental, less controversial improvements to the game, both for us and our players.
Yeah, basically incremental improvements and this learning of like that, you know, you don't need to change a lot to change everything. I think that was also a key learning coming from this.
And for us, it was also another secondary learning, maybe, if you will. But people really don't play, at least Brawl Stars, for the systems at all. They play it because of the gameplay, because the gameplay is engaging. And we spent possibly 80% of our dev resources on systems at that point. Now we don't anymore, and it shows.
Awesome. All right, so as Frank mentioned, the Star Road didn't succeed in recovering the game, which is a huge gut punch because that's what I was brought on to do. At this point, I was like, maybe I won't be here much longer. But I think the key here was that we didn't understand what our players wanted, in the sense that we were kind of in this echo chamber. Because even when we were showing our design for the Star Road and how we were going to remove loot boxes from the game to a bunch of other teams, and some folks were really critical, but because our pretense was we've already made this decision to remove loot boxes, people didn't actually question that. And so this echo chamber effect was real, very real. And that gets to kind of the fourth learning, is you really have to find folks to challenge you, particularly on big changes and particularly on what Amazon calls like one-way door decisions. Because you can't really go back from this. Like once Star Road is in, it's there. It's there forever, at least for now. And so, I mean, we did get like critical feedback, but it was more on the design of the Star Road and not so much. It was like second month into the job, I went to show one of our more vocal teams that were like the original Brawl Stars creators that had moved on to a new project, and I got grilled for half an hour on like the first version, which you don't see here, on the first version of the Star Road. So they do give us very impromptu feedback, and it sometimes comes really harsh. And now on the team, culturally, we're very happy to call each other out and talk about, hey, I don't think this is the right design, and we have very constructive and sometimes very colorful discussions. And we don't hold it sacred, like maybe this is part of the Finnish culture, but like people are very brutally honest and happy to voice their complaints. And then that actually comes back to really help us. So, all right. We hit our lowest monthly active users ever around Q1 of 2023. And at this point, like, my confidence level is shattered. But, despite this, team morale was actually really strong. And as a team, we felt quite empowered to turn Brawl around. There wasn't a lot of this self-victimizing. There was just a strong focus on, well, look, we're in this position. We're now the underdog. What can we do to really save the game? Certainly, if it did come through, it didn't come through the team, and maybe Frank took the brunt of it from other folks, but not.
I had full hair before that.
And as a team, we just started to really reflect, like, why didn't we hit the mark? We looked up, certainly, a bunch of internal data. Internal data is really good at predicting historical trends, not really good at predicting the future. And then we started looking more closely at our player sentiment. Our community team is very in touch with the community, and there's a lot of very good dialogue. And I want to highlight one particular from Trollfaces777, who writes, "Brawl Stars without chests," he's referring to boxes, "is not fun. Please return them." And I guess he had like another thought there after that, because he kind of trails off. But we got the picture.
We got a lot of one-star Google Play reviews in that period, like a lot.
Yeah. So whatever plans we had for the rest of the year were actually trashed. This is Ash. He's a trash bin brawler in our game, so we thought that would be a good reference point. Are you struck by something? Because I was. This was about March, April timeframe. And the fact that we were willing to just scrap our plans for what the June update was, and we had planned out the next couple of updates. We ship every 2 months. I was really inspired by how quickly the team kind of can make these decisions. Because in June, we made the decision, we shipped this decision, which was we had to infuse rewards once again with excitement. That the deterministic reward structure that we had with Star Road and vertical progression really was not working for us. Players were not entertained when they came and played the game anymore, and it showed through in our numbers. And so what did we do in June? Well, we added random engagement rewards. So you earn these by playing the game back into the game. And this is what they look like. Instead of a box, they're now a star, totally different. And what happened is you click, and there's a chance that the reward can upgrade from our lowest rarity, which is rare, to our highest, which is a legendary. That was a mythic one that you saw there, which is our second highest rarity. And every time you tap, there's a chance it upgrades. And we do think the design of this definitely helped us, and I think there was like two key things. The first is if you are considering designing random rewards, this anticipation is really important. That the fact that the player has this chance that the reward can upgrade is actually a very, very important piece, and that's why we have the tapping for upgrading built in. And ours is a two-step, because the first step is what will it upgrade to in terms of rarity, and the second step is what is the actual reward. The other really important thing is that it's really important to have a high highs, in the sense that your jackpot rewards need to feel like jackpot rewards. So the legendary, which is our highest rarity, that needs to have some really juicy rewards in there. And actually, when we launched it, we did not have a really good legendary reward. This was from the team. We actually had to improve upon this over a few months to kind of get it to where it is today that you can enjoy. Just to be really clear, we also added cosmetic items, cosmetic skins in the old box model. We did not have skins. Skins are actually a huge, exciting point to unlock, and so we added those also in. And this system complements the Star Road in the sense that we did not pull the Star Road out. This was just something that was added on top instead of deterministic rewards in a lot of places. And we do think that a key aspect of the design that worked was we made it really obvious. It was on the main hub. It was really easy to understand. You get 3 of these a day, and you just have to win, so there's no elaborate quests. If you're playing Brawl, hopefully you're winning at least above 50%, and you'll get these. You can't miss them. So, what were the initial results?
Let's take a look at retention first. Again, D30 is a stat we're using all the time. We almost don't care about D1, D7, etc. So we're very focused on the longer tail, and that starts, in our opinion, with D30. So the Blink catalog update and the Stardrops update, which also included another piece, which is an re-engagement program. Before that, you would come back to Brawl Stars, and there was nothing. So if you were gone for 2 years, you came back, there's probably 20 new brawlers, 5 new game modes, a lot of new systems, and we didn't reintroduce people at all. And now we did that. We learned from Clash of Clans, actually, who had a similar program, and ours worked really, really well. So the retention worked out. And as a result of that, our DAU started to recover, or the decline started slowing down, at least. Now, the interesting piece about this graph specifically is that, again, like it's summer period, the lion's share of our player base is in Europe. A lot of people go on vacation, as I mentioned earlier. We always see a drop. We always see a drop into the summer period. But the drop was curiously flatter now. We didn't release much new content in that period, so it's really people get just more sticky to the game. And the learning here is probably the most obvious from our perspective, but random rewards are indeed exciting for our players. And maybe that's so because our players grew up with a gacha in the game, but the amount of people buying into the completely on Rails experience, they were just much smaller group than the people who wanted an exciting gacha experience. So were we able to recover a little bit more in the future now? So this is our D30 until February. And you see the Stardrops update there on the left. And that was just the beginning of the recovery. The first update we shipped after the Stardrops was Hypercharges. That update was in September. It improved the value proposition for power level 11 in the game. So we replaced gears from that slot. So we didn't want to introduce a new power level. We moved that a little bit lower. And now you had, on power 11, the possibility to unlock a hypercharge. And we only introduced 6 at the beginning. And we were highly inspired by Clash Royale at that point, who just had shipped card evolutions. So there's a lot of cross-team learnings. If something works, it works. and we all want to use it. Clash Royale might just have introduced star drops. They're not called like that.
They're boxes, so they're completely different.
So what hypercharges do, as I said, they unlock at power 11, but they really give you a hero moment every game. So if you're a good player, you get probably 2, 3 hero moments, and if you're an average player, you get probably 1 hero moment. And in that moment, so you charge it along your super, and in that moment, you just get faster, stronger, and tougher. And the supers change. This is an example of how that looks with Shelly. So she's just on speed, runs really, really fast. Her super is much stronger than before.
And has a wider range, so it modifies the gameplay of that brawler. We lean into kind of their strengths.
The first batch of 6 hypercharges was received okay. I think we managed to reach about 25% of the original target for revenue. So that was not great. But we quickly took the learnings from that and iterated for the next releases. So hypercharges arrived here. Again, our retention pretty much flat at this point. Shortly after, we had a community event. The first community event after the Omega Box event. So we didn't do one for a long time.
Yeah.
Shooting star drops. It was an event that was triggered by the community. Again, the community could play. Takedowns were counted. And depending on where the community would end up, they would get bonuses. And we also added hypercharges to star drops at that point. Mm-hmm. And last but not least, we also turned on a live ops modifier to get 2 star drops every time you would get 1 before. And again, community event was super hyper. It was pretty clear that people liked star drops.
And wanted more.
And wanted more, yes.
And this was like a very slight change for us. Like, you just get double. That's the event. And then we have this progress bar that we track as to like how many takedowns the community has received. And it's just a bar that moves up, and that's it. That's the design.
Then we also introduced the mega pick. The mega pick, I'm not actually sure how we ended up with a pick. I wanted a pinata. But anyhow, so we had the mega pick that replaced the previous social features, which were Club League and quests. Club League was an event going on every other week. Every other week, you got tickets and had to play on 3 different days to get rewards. Now the mega pick is once a month for 3 days, very clear on a weekend. In the old world, you had to play 24 to 36 matches per month, depending on the length of the month. Now you play 15 a month. Previously, you had a choice, depending on where you were in the game, regular matches or competitive matches, which are rather long, best of 3, picks, bans. Now we have just a simplified format. It's the competitive format without bans. It's just best of 1. And we also introduced modifiers to the game to make it a bit more lighthearted and fun. Before that, you got club coins from your club rewards, and then there was a store. From that store, you could buy specific items only for club coins. We removed all that complexity. Now in the mega pick, as your club is filling the mega pick, you just get more and more star drops as a reward at the end. And yeah, we had league ranks before, no more ranks, no more hardcoreness. Our goal was to get the old system engaged less than 10% of our DAU. And our goal was 20 for the mega pick. And currently we're sitting above 40% participation.
And this we cut a ton of complexity. As Frank mentioned, it took him that long to explain the design. This new format is literally for 3 days a week. You come in, there's a mega pig game mode. You click it, you play, and then you earn for the club. And that's it. That's the basic design.
The star drop effect, the community event shooting star drop effect, and then the mega pick release here. And once again, our retention improved a little. The next update we shipped took our old Brawl Pass and transitioned it to a new pass. And the easiest to compare those two is this slide. The old pass was a bi-monthly event, 7 to 9 weeks. The new one is 4 to 5 weeks every month. Always starts on the first Thursday of a month. The old one was available for gems, which is our premium currency, 169 gems, or IAP USD 99. Now the interesting piece here is that on the free track of the pass, you could earn 90 gems for free, which means that free-to-play players could buy the pass every other season for free. And so, and the value proposition was 13x, and it included an exclusive brawler that was part of that season. Now we changed it quite drastically. It's now IAP only. The regular pass costs $6.99, and the big pass costs $9.99. It's called Plus. There's no more exclusive brawler in there, which I had some sleepless nights over. We can give out actually more gems for people because they cannot spend them on getting the Brawl Pass anymore. And we were able to increase the value proposition for paying players because we wouldn't give that to all the free-to-play players anymore. At the same time, we buffed the free progression. So we took what they earned before in the premium pass every other season and the regular stuff, and all merged that into the new monthly season. So the free-to-play players actually got a buff out of all of this, so they felt pretty good with it. And of course, payers also feel pretty good with it because all of a sudden we give a lot more value. So how would the community respond if the Brawl Pass was only available as an IRP? Well, again, that could have gone really, really bad for us. And we countered that in 3 ways. We communicated really early that we would make a change, early November. The first new season would start in January, to give a frame of reference. We also, as I already mentioned, we buffed the free-to-play progression. And we were, in general, really, really transparent with the community who would get what in the new world. So we showed a table on socials even like 2 months before. And so people could compare, content creators could create content around it, and actually like, oh, yeah, they're not lying to us. This is actually more. And community sentiment went to a place where people all of a sudden were rather positive with all those changes, which was absolutely not expected.
The backstory here that is kind of important is our community manager, Danny, shout out to him. He came to us quite early on, and he saw that we were moving to a IAP Brawl Pass, and he's very in tune with the community. And he made a very strong stance, almost like a die on the hill kind of stance, that if we didn't execute properly and buff free-to-play with this, like it was going to be a non-starter, and we were going to flail really, really hard. And we've seen other games like out, because we do our research, and like it's really hard to do this transition if you're free to play looking at this and saying, now I have to pay, and not every 2 months, every month. So we just tried really hard to get in front of it and be transparent and in plain English tell you, hey, this is what you're getting in the new world, almost like the exact numbers. Like Jeff, who's one of the other really talented designer on the team, like crunched a bunch of numbers and worked with Danny on this and the community folks to really get this. And I do think it ended up being really well received as a result of all that hard work. So shout out to all those folks.
We also added 5v5 game modes that comes to speak about the gameplay side. We finally decided to actually increase the team size a little, so we would have more people working on gameplay. That happened about mid last year. And so the first results showed in December when we were able to ship some new game modes. The community had to ask us to have 5v5 for a long, long time. We were always, oh, there's so many problems with this. And then we just decided to do it for the community. And it was really positive. And so we had some more community events to send off another currency. Then the Brawl Pass update arrived. Then we had another event where you could play together to earn more rewards. And then maybe about Stardrops.
Yeah, and after introducing them in June, we continued to kind of add them to other key areas of the game. So we have a couple of key areas we consider pivotal to the game. One is Trophy Road. This is your main progression. Everybody talks about the game in terms of how many trophies they own. You earn trophies for playing matches. We added them there. We added them to Megapig, as Frank mentioned earlier. We added them as live ops and offers that you saw the community events, all of them largely centered around this new star drop and just getting more star drops. And we added them to the pass on the free track. And lastly, more recently, in February update, we added them as we revamped our rank mode, which also had very low participation rate. So we felt we had to kind of go back and rework a lot of the key systems. And over the last 8 months, the trend has been to revamp old systems that have very low participation rate, make them easier to understand, and add more random rewards in the process.
So, zoomed out again a little bit and looking at MAU, this is how this looked. So you can see things consistently becoming more flat at summer, even going up a little, and then from there just kept creeping up. And so the increase between our low point over there, which was June 2023, and February, we increased our MAU by 2.4x. Zoomed in a little, looking at the average DAU, that actually improved by 3.9x. So it's not only that more people are playing the game, it's also they're playing it more intensively. And some of these changes, like the Brawl Pass being shorter, always a Brawl Pass waiting for you, etc., surely have to do with that. And the last but not least, the revenue. It increased by 8.8x from June last year to February. And March is on track of being a growth month as well. So that feels pretty good for the team. So yes,
we call that doing okay in Finland.
The Finns in the room appreciate it. When you see, the learning here is that when you see retention-based momentum, really double down with everything you have. You know, these hype moments in driving installs, that's easy. There's always a tool. There's UA, you can go massive there, you can invest a lot of money, or you find other ways like content creators to work with. Creating temporary momentum for a game is not the difficult exercise. The difficult exercise is to improve retention. And when retention is there, everything that you do, every hype moment, every USD you spend on UA, all of that, you know, becomes much more powerful. So we were able, once the star drops and the re-engagement calendar changed our retention to something much more meaningful, that allowed us then to invest heavier in UA. It allowed us to push more with the community side, because all of a sudden we're driving people into the game and they're actually sticking around.
So at this point, you might wonder, okay, we had boxes. There's obvious nervousness when you remove loot boxes as your primary monetization. How does that change in terms of paying behavior? And what does it look like in a world where rewards are largely deterministic? Because you can't monetize on star drops, largely speaking. Well, this graph can show you that story. So from January to December 2022 is the left-hand side. That was when boxes were in. This is just looking at the equivalent of boxes in the old world versus the new world. So we don't have Brawl Pass on here because it would mess with the comparisons. And in the new world, starting December, you know, you could basically like buy coins. You can unlock a brawler by just spending paid gems. You can level them up spending paid gems and or gems in general. And items we call like the gameplay related stuff. And you can see actually, we were shocked by this, that it's been relatively consistent. And we did not expect it to be this stable, and now we're actually trending up, as you can see towards the end of that. So this was like definitely surprising to us that we were able to transition off of, you know, loot box based monetization, largely speaking. So that gets to kind of the recap, which is I'll just go over the key learnings, and then I'll kind of summarize with a kind of a final lesson that's on here for folks to take an easy screenshot of. The first is, when wrestling with the design, simplify. And I can't stress this point enough. It's like a lot of the designs and features that we've done since have been a lot of simplification while trying to maintain depth. That's ultimately where we think the best design lies in terms of elegance. The second is to reduce noise, particularly around big changes. You saw us introduce Omega Box, a bunch of other December stuff. Probably should have moved Star Road to February, for instance. The third is that big changes are, in our case, not a silver bullet. That actually, if you look at all the incremental improvements we've made since June, those were all like relatively small in terms of, versus a Star Road took like 6 months of development. Each of those updates, for better or for worse, we kind of develop in 2 months and we ship every 2 months. So we double down on one major feature every 2 months, and we kind of we do that. So it's a lot of this is like incremental improvements. The fourth is to really find people who can challenge you. And on the team, some of the folks are here today. They challenge us every day, especially on design-related stuff. So hats off to everybody that's here and everybody who's watching remote and on the team that are working on the maintenance right now that we have going on. That's really, really important culturally for us. The fifth is random rewards are really exciting, especially for engagement purposes. And the last is if you see retention-based momentum, double down. And maybe like the final thing to kind of wrap this up for us is ultimately the player doesn't care about any specific thing you do. When they come and play the game, they're subconsciously asking themselves, what are they entertained? And if the answer is no for too many days in a row, you get what we had in June. And I think what we've done, and a lot of this is we don't know how much of which contributed to this kind of historical highs that we've hit 5 years into the game, but certainly players come back and they're entertained and they're telling their friends to come back. And we think a lot of it is maybe viral spread through the school networks. So thank you for having schools in this world to help spread Brawl Stars. And that concludes our talk. So there's a lot of stuff that we didn't get a chance to cover, but certainly there's a lot of details here and a lot of work done by a lot of the team that is not captured in this presentation. But certainly come and ask us about any of the specifics there. And certainly we're hiring a lot of roles. And so if you are interested in joining this adventure, please consider that too. That's it. Thank you for your time. I guess maybe, do we have time for a few questions? Not sure. We have 10 minutes for some questions.
Hello. Thank you so much for the talk. Do you have a target retention rate that you kind of know is going to lead to the growth that you're looking for? And just what's the KPIs that are indicating that you're heading in the right direction versus, maybe not what you're looking for? Is it D30 pretty much it?
I don't think we have a target retention rate per se. It's like we're constantly looking at how the cohorts do. We talk now a lot about new player retention as well, depending on when your game is. Returning player retention is probably more important. In Brawl Stars, early last year, the amount of returning users coming into the game every day started outpacing the amount of new users, for example. So we had to really take serious that we had to measure returning player retention, etc. There's no specific target number in mind. Other indicators, really, like as long as the graphs go up, that's it. But there's a gazillion of different KPIs we're looking at every day, really.
And just the churn rate's also top of mind for us, and that's been steadily decreasing.
And just to follow up really quick, gameplay changes, does that, how do you separate those from things like system changes and monetization?
The way the team is structured now is that within Supercell, we transitioned to a world where each of the live game teams, which we call cells, they're essentially independent business unit. And within those, we have sub-cells run usually by a lead or a captain. And in Brawl Stars, we made the separation that we have a feature development team and we have a gameplay team. And that's how we split. Today is still I would say the feature development team is still much bigger in terms of headcount than the gameplay side. But this is mostly because a lot of people are flexing between roles. We have a few people actually in the room who are working like as a, for example, UX, UI artist, who will also work on gameplay stuff when necessary. Or we have client programmers and server engineers on the team who don't mind flexing in one direction or the other. So we're trying to stay as flexible as possible on that side.
Gotcha.
Other game teams are structured in different ways. So at Supercell, we made the decision that each of the live games can ultimately decide how they want to work.
And do you stagger releases between the both of them?
No, we don't. We're having goals for both things every update cycle.
Gotcha, cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And there's a lot more focus on gameplay iteration now than ever before because ultimately that is really, really important for us rather than just purely a systems change.
Hey, thanks a lot for the talk. I'm wondering just generally in Supercell, like in current teams and also going forward, what the feeling on loot boxes is. Is there like a systemic movement away from them, or is it sort of each team is kind of making its own decision as they go?
There's no mandate from the company, so it's completely down to the game teams.
But I mean, in terms of how the game teams are feeling about it generally, do you see kind of a movement away from it, or is it kind of all over?
I would say it's pretty much 50-50 still. So some game teams still believe in it, and some other game teams want to try something else. But there's again, independent business units. Each game team can make their own decisions, and there's no pressure from the outside to go one way or another.
All right, cool. And actually, just a follow-up. So the difference between loot box and like random rewards is basically one of them you can pay for and the other one you don't, right?
Well, it's really like, I'm not sure how hard that definition is.
Yeah.
The way we're using them right now is mostly engagement-based. We have introduced them as part of chain offers as freebies. We might, in the future, offer them for gems again. It's like, we're always trying to do the best for our players, and we ultimately will experiment with things to see how our players accept them. Yeah, I would expect more experiments from our side with random rewards.
Thanks.
Cool.
Hello. So one of your bullet points was to try to reduce noise around big changes so you can measure the success easier. How do you do that? Because I know that you mentioned that summer was like kind of your slow season, and if you know that Christmas time, everyone has Christmas money and there's more spend, and I'm sure there's some changes that you'd want to piggyback on Christmas. How do you like balance that tension between like, we want to make this easier to measure versus we want this to piggyback on Christmas?
I mean, depends. If you could ship the thing a little bit earlier to have still some clean data from October or November before going into the Christmas period. You can, of course, ship it a little bit later. Like, I guess it depends a lot on the game.
Right.
In our case, January is usually on a similar level revenue-wise, for example, like December still. So, yeah, I think you could work around it. But I also don't think it would be a problem if you have just this one big change. Because if you have historical data from previous years, oh, my game is usually going this direction. So then you can compare a little bit easier maybe. But for us, it was just too much. We were in this mindset that we always wanted to do really as much as possible and squeeze it into every update. And I do, from today's perspective, I think that was a mistake. And we would like to move away from that. And we've started a very conscious journey now to move away from that and be very deliberate about that. Like, oh no, we are not shipping these two big things at the same time. Yep.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Hello, Franks. Your journey has been incredible since beta, and you've had to pivot many times. And thank you for bringing those insights to GDC. Supercell is also known for dropping projects that don't work out. So what metrics kept Brawl Stars alive?
What metric?
Yeah, well, Frank was there for some critical periods of time when the game was still being killed, so you're probably best to answer this.
I think it's really like, it sounds super fluffy, okay? But besides metrics, of course, if the metrics say this is an absolute no-go from our experience, then the team will probably kill their darlings. But if things are a bit more on the edge, then there's a second component, and that is the team. How does a team feel with their product? We're not making top-down decisions, so it's not our leadership team saying, you got to kill this game. They will challenge you probably if it doesn't look great, and if you don't have answers, you will probably come to the conclusion yourself that you got to kill it. But in Brawl Stars' case, for example, it was very much on the edge. Before we made the decision to go global, between May and June 2018, we were in the situation where we rolled it also out to the soft launch to Android, which we hadn't done before. And that changed the numbers already a lot. But it was still like, it's like, could go this way, could go that way. Then we compared against Clash and Royale data, and we're like, oh, we look pretty bad, actually. But there were a lot of people in the team back then. The data scientist in the team, he was really conservative. So he always, assumed the worst. He was like, Frank, we're going to hit March, and I'll go to 13 million DAU, and then we're going to die. And that was not super inspiring, as you can imagine, maybe. So it was really about like trying to give other perspectives, other angles, and like, hey, there's possibly also best case. And Clash of Clans was released in 2012. Does it still make sense to compare a game in 2018, which is an action game with a very different audience? So it's like, sorry, that's maybe a convoluted answer, but there is a mix between the KPIs need to look good, we have a lot of benchmark values there, but there's also the team component. If a team believes, then you can mitigate risk by having a smaller budget for going global, for example, marketing-wise.
Thank you for believing.
Thank you. I think we're out of time.
Yeah,
I think we're out of time.
Sorry, we're out of time.
But Frank and I will be outside of the room if you have some other
Yes,
questions.
definitely.
Thank you.
Thanks again.